If you own commercial property, you know the pressure is always on to boost the bottom line. But what if I told you one of your biggest revenue opportunities isn't in some complicated sales plan? It's literally right above your head. Yeah, on your roof. So let's get into it. Let's talk about this financial strategy that's, well, kind of hidden in plain sight.
So let's kick things off with this quote from the Gartner Group. A 5% reduction in operating costs has the same P&L impact as a 30% increase in sales. Think about that for a second. A 30% jump in sales? I mean, that's a huge lift for any business. But cutting costs by 5%, that feels a lot more doable, right? And the kicker is, it does the exact same thing for your bottom line.
Okay, so that's the big question, isn't it? The million-dollar question. You've already squeezed your vendors, you've optimized every process you can think of. So where do you find those savings? Without having to start cutting into the bone of your business. Right. So we're all on this constant hunt to make the numbers better, improve that net operating income. It feels like you're always chasing these little wins here and there. But what if? What if there's a huge one that we've all been overlooking? And this is where things get really interesting. We're going to pivot from the problem to a really powerful solution. And that solution is solar. But hold on, don't think of this just as a green thing, an environmental choice. No. We're going to look at solar as a serious financial tool. And the secret sauce here is something called the incentive stack. So, what is stacking? Well, the magic here isn't in any single incentive. It's about layering them on top of each other, just like it sounds. You take a federal tax credit. You stack a state level rebate on top of that. And then you might even add a local or utility program on top of that. When you pile them all together, that's what crushes your net cost and puts your return on investment into hyperdrive. Okay, that's the theory, but how does this actually work in the real world? What do the numbers look like? Let's break it down and look at three different sizes of commercial roofs. We'll use a 30-year cash flow analysis to really see what the impact is. All right, first up, scenario one. We're talking a 25,000 square foot roof. This is a pretty common size. Think of your average medium sized retail store or a smaller industrial building. So here's how we're going to look at this. You've got your gross project cost, the big, scary number at the top. But then you subtract all those stacked incentives we just talked about. And what's left is your actual net investment. And honestly, this number is often way, way lower than people expect. From there, it's pretty straightforward to project out the cash flow over 30 years, whether you're paying cash up front or financing it. Okay, let's scale up. Scenario two, we're doubling it to a 50,000 square foot roof. Now you're thinking more like a larger retail center or maybe a mid-sized office building. What do the numbers look like now? And what you see is that the model just scales. Yeah, the gross cost is bigger, obviously, but the value of all those stacked incentives gets bigger too. The fundamental idea is exactly the same. Your whole goal is to make that net investment number as small as possible to get the biggest long-term cash flow. All right, last scenario. Let's go big. 100,000 square feet. Now we're talking about your large-scale properties. Warehouses, massive distribution centers, big manufacturing plants, the whole shebang. And this is where the strategy goes from good idea to absolute game changer. At this scale, the dollar amount of the incentives is just massive. So big, in fact, that it can completely transform the entire financial picture of the property. We're talking about generating some serious positive cash flow for decades to come. Okay, so creating a new revenue stream from your roof is pretty amazing. But what if I told you there was a major bonus? That this same strategy could help you deal with another huge and, frankly, dreaded capital expense? Yeah, this is where it gets really good. Just think about it like this. On one hand, you have a solar project. It's great, it generates a return. On the other hand, what if you have to replace your roof anyway? I mean, it's a huge expense that's coming sooner or later. Well, you can bundle them together. And this is the part that's just a total game changer. Those amazing incentives we've been talking about, they don't just cover the solar panels, they can actually be applied to the roofing work itself. And this is the absolute key takeaway. That massive, painful capital expense, a new roof, suddenly becomes part of an investment that pays you back, and fast. You're using these incentives to basically subsidize a huge chunk of the cost. You are literally turning what was a liability on your books into a revenue-generating asset. That is just incredible. Okay, so let's start to wrap this up. Let's just quickly recap the key financial moves we've been talking about here. So, what do we learn? First, you can take a fixed cost, your power bill, and flip it into a revenue source.
How? By stacking all those government and utility incentives to absolutely crush your initial investment. And maybe the biggest kicker of all, you can use this same strategy to help pay for a new roof, getting a fast ROI on something that's usually just a giant, painful check to write. Which really just leaves us with one final question for you. For years, you've probably just thought of your roof as, well, a roof, something that keeps the rain out. But after all this, you have to ask yourself, what kind of hidden revenue is just sitting up there, right now, waiting for you to unlock it?
And just so you know, all the analysis in this explainer was based on materials from Revenue Task Force.